grandfather, William Eugene Daubenmire Sr., was indeed an unforgettable man. He was the patriarch of our family and left a legacy that deserves to be acknowledged. I'm honored to be his oldest grandson and namesake, William Eugene Daubenmire III. Now, being a twin, I had competition for this title up until the very end, so it's not something that I take for granted. In fact, Brad was born 25 minutes after I was, which is quite a long time, so I like to think that he delayed his birth a bit in protest for losing out on a birthright name. Now, Grandpa was definitely the patriarch of the family, but what does that mean? To be the patriarch, you must take rulership and ownership of the family very seriously. In the Bible, the word patriarch refers to men who are regarded as fathers and rulers of the family, and that's exactly what Grandpa was to our family. If the Daubenmire family was together, and that happened very often growing up, there was no question that Grandpa was the head of the Daubenmire clan. No doubt Grandpa left behind a great legacy. A legacy can be described as a guidepost for current and future generations. It involved their beliefs, actions, and the accomplishments and work that they did during their life. And Grandpa's actions and accomplishments were dignified and many. He served his country, his community, and most of all his family with a wholehearted devotion that is rarely seen. Grandpa was one of a kind. He was a natural leader, a natural humanitarian, and a natural family man. To be all these things takes a lot of effort and determination, but he somehow made it look easy because that's just who he was. And one of the reasons he was so successful was because of the woman that he chose to be his lifelong partner. It's impossible to talk about Grandpa without talking about Grandma. Every Bill needs a Betty, and he had his one and only Betty Jean. What an amazing woman with a legacy all her own. And she had the personality and charm that was a perfect complement to his. They were a great team, and as a young couple, their 5 kids were their pride and joy. They provided a beautiful home and lifestyle for the kids as they both worked to support the family. In fact, after visiting Grandpa at the nursing home a few weeks ago, Dad drove us past the home where him, Uncle Peanut, and Aunt Karen were born. And so he may have done that before, but I don't remember that, so that was kind of a great thing to see. Now, during the 50s and 60s, the family grew and prospered while living the post-World War II American dream. Grandpa and Grandma were both fans of the young President John F. Kennedy and worked hard to be good parents as well as good citizens of the community. These were values that they both held their entire lifetimes. The famous JFK quote was, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." And Grandpa took that quote to heart. It was on a portrait that hung in his basement. On a side note, that portrait was also on hinges that opened up, and behind that was a safe where he kept the family personal valuables. So as a kid, I thought that was one of the coolest things ever. It looked straight out of the movies. Of course, at this time, the family lived in a house at 2610 BIS Road, and boy, if those walls could talk. As the childhood home of Dad, Peanut, and Mikey, I can only imagine the things that went down on that property back in the day. Throw in the bookends of Karen and later Kristen, and there were a lot of big personalities for that one small house to hold. Grandpa and Grandma had that house for over 60 years, and it was just a natural extension of that. That place is the definition of what we call a home, and it's the source of so many great memories. The fancy portrait of JFK wasn't even the best picture in the room. That distinction belonged to a picture of Grandma that hung in the collage over by the bar. I know all the cousins know what picture I'm talking about. It was right at eye level too, so that could have been a coincidence. Now, if I close my eyes, I can still hear the fireplace cracking in that basement living room. You know, I can still smell what that room smelled. I can feel the warmth of the room and see Grandpa sitting in his recliner there, in his robe, of course. And at the other end of the house, there was the second level outside porch, and that got a lot of use in the summertime. It also had a great view of the amazing backyard of the place. I remember Grandpa drinking his coffee and reading the paper out there when we would visit on weekend mornings. Later in the day, he would watch the end of the Buckeye game on a little TV that he had back there and drink Tab out of that mini fridge. That's the only place I've ever seen Tab drank. I don't know where he bought that stuff. Or he told him. But that always showed up at Grandpa's house. Grandpa knew where everyone was. In the yard by the driveway, there was a handmade white painted sign, directional sign. Every family or loved one had an arrow with their name on it, pointed to the direction of their house and exactly how many miles they were away. A few years ago, that house was sold and many of us paid one last visit after the Daubenmire reunion. It felt strange to know that another family would soon call this place home. It seemed like the more appropriate thing would have been for that to be registered as a national landmark. I know that I would have paid admission to see that one more time as it was back then. I can only hope that the new family treasures the place as much as we did. Another thing about Grandpa is that he loved his initials. W.E.D. could be found everywhere in the house. Stationery, linens, drinking glasses, anywhere there was room for three letters, there was a W.E.D. there. And that leads me to the ring, which Nick talked about, but I did get the W.E.D. gold pinky ring. And Grandpa wore this every day. Now, you don't see too many gold pinky rings out there. The guys that wear it either had a great big personality like Grandpa, or they're in a shadier line of work. So needless to say, I do not wear it often. But like Nick said, I always tried to wear it when I was off to see Grandpa. And the one time I do remember Nick walking up to Grandpa, I was like, knowing I didn't have mine yet on, and Grandpa hadn't yet checked my wrist. It was like, hey, little Bill, where's your ring? Oh. Nick was never afraid to dig in a little bit. But like he said, we took care of each other after that. Grandpa, even as he got older with this ring, he would, as he started to lose his eyesight, even then he'd say, do you have your ring on? And he'd just be reaching for the hand to feel to see if it was still there. So the few times that it wasn't, he did shake his head in disappointment. But I'm still very proud to own it. And also another thing about this ring, there was always something a little bit off about it. It was the W. It was a little smaller than the other two letters. And after a while, I figured out why. As everybody knows, Grandpa was a big letter writer. His first stop every day into town was at the post office. So I know that I received quite a few of these letters over the years, and I'm sure many here have as well. In fact, I looked through my files this last week, and I was glad to see that I had kept a few of them, as well as a few handwritten cards from Grandma. Of course, Grandpa always had his W.D. pinky ring on as he sat at his desk, and as he would write, this W would slide across the paper. So over the years, over hundreds or thousands of letters and hundreds of hours, it slowly wore this W down. So not only does it give the ring character, but it does say a lot about the man that wore it. So even if I don't wear it often, I am very proud to own it. So wrapping up, it is just so hard to put into words what a great man Grandpa was, and just how much he meant to so many people. So I love you, Grandpa, and we'll miss you very much.